This is the Founders Catalyst. All right, we are back for another episode of the Founders Catalyst. Lee, should we just tell the good listeners the events of your morning so far and the way in which you've arrived now to this episode? I mean, I've said it now, so you have to actually say something about it, you know?
So you're going to out me immediately?
Immediately. I mean, again,
okay.
This is the risk you take when you let me open up every episode. So, yeah.
Yeah, let's just say my morning didn't go as planned when I got a phone call from you asking me where I was and I hadn't actually got out of bed yet. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We'll just leave it there. I mean, I think it's important that we be transparent with our listeners and we let them in on our own flaws, our own mistakes. We do it. It's going to happen. And Lee, you will undoubtedly get the opportunity to return the favor and out me at some point, probably not too long into the future. So,
well, the bonus is I'm very well slept. Had a very long sleep, so that's good.
Yeah, and you're just coming out of it too, so you might actually be really just in this mindset of wisdom right now. You know, still
that or mindset of nothing. We'll see.
We'll see. We will see. We've got about 30 minutes to test both hypotheses right now, so let's just see how we do. But today, mate, we're gonna get into something that is very much pertinent to both of our worlds. We both lived and experienced some of the notions around this topic, and we certainly work with folks today on finding what we're going to call alignment between financial success and emotional fulfillment. Because there is this belief, let's say, in the world where it's almost too big a dream to have both, right? You know, if you're going to go chase that financial freedom, that financial success, then good luck with it, but it's going to come with those costs. It's going to come. You're going to have frayed relationships. You're maybe going to have an unsettled life at home, or you just give up on all of that, right? And you settle, so to speak, as people will like to say. You settle for an easier road, and you focus on family first and all that kind of thing. But you and I are going to spend some time this morning talking to the notion that we do believe that you can have both, and it's going to come down to obviously some very, very purposeful work, intentional work in order to have those. I'm curious, you know, because when we go over these ideas, we kind of go back and forth and we brainstorm a little bit. When we brought this idea up, what first came to mind for you? Like, what were some of those immediate just sort of thoughts and just key components around this notion?
I think firstly, our own journeys. So the experience we've had with being successful in different careers from what we have now, and then what caused us to leave those careers. So for me, I've had 3 major working careers. So that means I've left 2 careers, both of which I was very successful in. So I think exploring why I did that could be useful for listeners to hear that it is possible for you too. And all of them were startups. There were my own businesses that I started. So I started 2 businesses and sold 2 businesses. In fact, 4 businesses in total, 2 connected with those businesses. And there's a reason why I did that. And I think that's important to look at. And then just thinking about psychology, how human beings work, what we know about what makes us happy, fulfilled, what is motivational to us, and then how that collides with society's version of what is successful, especially in America. So I have a bit of a issue with the American dream, because I think it actually sets people up for failure, not for success. So I think we could kind of get into exploring as well that societal push for what American society believes is success, and then what we actually see human beings discovering as success.
Yeah, what better way to have 2 British blokes talk about the American dream? You know, I think that's
let's see if we can get cancelled.
That's right. That's right. But saying that, I mean, that's the pitch, right? I mean, I know a lot of it is sometimes sold to the domestic American, but that's the dream, right? You come in as an immigrant, you create your business, and you set yourself up for this financial freedom and this whole story. But we'll get to that in a moment. Let's definitely start on our own journeys, and you know, I'm actually going to lead here and just say that coming out of elite swimming as I did as a swim coach, for about 12 to 18 months after I made the decision, because I didn't really go over the decision with too many folks that were in the industry at the time. I was just consistently asked, when are you coming back? It was just all the time. It's like, all right, have you had your break now? Have you gotten recharged, refreshed? Are you ready to come back? And then there's always this sort of 2 or 3 month window just around the springtime, where in the world of college athletics and swimming specifically, all the firings and the hirings are happening. And so there was 2 rounds of that in 2022 and 2023, where folks not only asked me, hey, where are you putting your name in and all this kind of stuff, but I even had a couple of people flat out call me up and ask me, am I ready to come work for them? And it was strange, because I couldn't have been any clearer when I left why I was leaving. I was leaving because the life of that was not what I wanted. Like I couldn't have been any clearer. I said it on social media. I said it to anybody that cared to reach out. But the fact of the matter was, I was being told by these folks that, hey, you've built this reputation and this standard for performance in this world, and you're an idiot to go and do something else. Pretty much. That's how I felt in the way I was being spoken to, and almost as though I'm quitting. I'm giving up on my journey of success. And at the heart of it, though, here I was building a business, probably putting more time than I'd ever put into my career, while at the same time finding and remaining truly committed to the alignment of what mattered most and continues to matter most to me, which is my wife, my children, and most importantly, I would actually say my mental health. My mental health is right dead center. If there's ever a day that goes by and I'm off, I know straight away it has something to do with that alignment between the things that matter most and some of these things that I'm maybe pushing a little bit too hard for. And so I don't tell this story. I think we need to be careful with this. I don't tell this story as a way of saying, like, hey, if you ever feel this kind of thing, I encourage you to jump ship, go start a new career, go start a business. That's not what this is about. But really at the heart of it, you just have, I felt, I was learning through that 12 to 18 months that I need to be really careful who I listen to and who's so-called, people tell me they've got my best interests at heart without really knowing what my best interests are. And that was a very telling time during those 12 to 18 months, especially after I left swimming, that it felt as though, hey, people were trying to force me back into a shape. I've made it clear this is a square hole and I am a circular peg, and you continue to tell me that I'm a square. And it's just like, I'm not a square. I don't want to be a square, and I'm working really hard now to establish myself over here as the circle that I am. I'm just going to dry that metaphor out to its absolute end.
You're definitely a square, so you must have been round. I think you touched on a good point, though, Steve. Mental health is definitely a big part of it. When I think about why I sold 2 companies and made drastic changes, so I worked for 12 years, 6 years with a corporate company, 6 years with my own real estate business, to being one of the top 3 agencies in the town that I was in, which was a big town with 100 real estate agents in it, and I sold it. And why did I do that? Because I just knew in my heart it was no longer serving me. I was no longer enjoying it. I was no longer happy. And we can touch on how that fits with the theme of today of, I felt this pressure to be successful. So societal pressure, having a nice property, having a nice car, like I like cars. So, that is a demonstration of my success. Yeah, I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy at all. I was earning, for my age, a lot of money, and more money than any of my friends that went to university. And we can kind of get into my background there, maybe in a different episode, of how people end up doing the kind of things that we do and how you become a founder. But I just wasn't happy, and I knew I wasn't happy, and I knew something needed to change. And I didn't tell anybody, because I was selling a going business, and obviously I didn't want any of my clients to know. So I sold 3 people: my girlfriend at the time, my mum, and one colleague that was my second in command. And even that was a mistake, because he went and told some other people before the business was sold, and nearly actually lost me the sale. The person who was buying the business rang me up and said, "Hey, so-and-so saying this," and I had to go and have a word with them. So I think for me, it almost felt like I had no choice. And I'm curious if it was the same for you. I just got to this point where I can't do this anymore. It doesn't even feel a choice. I know things have to change. And I was just listening to Guy Raz being interviewed by Stephen Bartlett on a Diary of a CEO. And for those that don't know, Guy Raz still has a great series on NPR, How I Built This, talking to founders. I think he said he's done 10,000 interviews, which is incredible, of business leaders, founders of startups, CEOs. And he says that often this is what happened. People know they just can't do what they're doing, and they have this desire to do something, and they don't know why, but they just do. And this is how I felt. I had to make a change. And then my second experience of selling the business and transforming myself again was much more similar to yours. So this was when I was working with the Olympic Development Program for USA Cycling. I also had my own private coaching business at the same time, because bless them, USA Cycling don't pay you enough money to survive. So I still had to have my own business. At that point, I was working 7 days a week in a role that I loved. I loved doing cycling coaching, but I knew it wasn't fulfilling me. It wasn't, I wasn't working with enough people. I wasn't making a big enough impact, and I could keep feeling that. I felt like I was kind of at the edge of my learning in that career, and it wasn't motivating me to learn much more. I was like, okay, I'm really good at this, but now what? So I wasn't having the impact I wanted. I felt I wasn't getting stretched enough. Almost actually more, I felt that my abilities and my intelligence isn't quite the right word. My capability wasn't getting stretched as much as I needed it to. I needed something even more challenging than this, which sounds crazy when you work in elite sport, but I just needed something bigger than that. And when I started telling people that I was going to do something different, and actually this time, instead of keeping everything quiet, I started my leadership company while I still had the cycling coaching business. And there was a 6-month period when they coexisted together before I sold the cycling coaching business. And people like, oh, is this just a hobby? You don't really want to do that. You're really good at cycling coaching. Or the people I was working with, oh, I don't want you to leave. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be leaving. That's what's going to happen. And similar to you, I did a big post on Facebook explaining why. And that wasn't a narcissistic, oh, let me tell you about me. It was so that people would stop bothering me and asking me, why are you doing this thing? Why are you not cycling coaching anymore? So I needed some kind of definitive declaration, probably as much to myself, right, this is a new starting point. I am no longer a cycling coach. And that was the day after I'd sold the business and made it very clear, that's it. This is, even putting in there, if you see me at a bike race, don't come and ask me for advice. I put it politely,
right?
But I wanted to be clear that part of my life was now done, and I am now moving on.
Yeah. And you said you sort of asked me a question there within your comments, and do I feel as though I had any other option at the time? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That getting out was my only option as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
And I do want to make this now almost. This is where I think you and I, as the coaches we are, can start to become very resourceful for anyone listening to this. That's hearing themselves in their current, where they find themselves currently, or at least knows of somebody, because that's one thing I'm adamant about, is that for every one of you and I who feel like this, act upon this, and start to pursue that fulfillment, we probably know at minimum at any given time 4 to 5 people that are in that place that we once were, and they need this message. So even if you're the one that's not in need of this message right now, I can assure you that this information will be useful to you much sooner rather than later. And where I want to go with this now is just, when I look back at that version of me, And let's say I was to allow myself mentally to somehow get to that same point doing what it is I'm doing now, knowing that this is the road that I am so fulfilled on, and for whatever reason I get astray and I lose where I'm going, and I no longer feel the need to do it or want to do it, or feel lack the passion, and realize all my priorities are out of whack. I think the first thing that, whenever I'm working with someone currently who's going through these sort of moments, is I try to just ask them, can you remember why you started in the first place? Like, can you remember why you set off on this journey in the first place? And mate, what's crazy is that I was at a retreat. I was at a retreat with my church actually over the weekend, and a friend of mine, he wanted a ride back to Baton Rouge, and we ended up talking for about an hour, and it wasn't too different to what we're talking about now, based on just some of the stuff he was talking about from the respect of his business. And it became like an impromptu coaching session as we were just driving back. And what was crazy was that at the heart of that discussion, there was 3 or 4 options that he felt as though he now had, that he had to pick from these 3 or 4. And I sort of asked him, I said, well, I'm curious, when you first set off on this journey, were any of these 3 or 4 options part of that vision? He's like, no. I'm like, so what was the initial vision? What was the initial destination, an idea of a destination? Because I have to assume that's why you started. He's like, you're absolutely right. It's like, why not get back to that? Why not let's go all the way back to the beginning, and let's go back to that really passionate version of you, that really excited, optimistic, forward-thinking version of you. And let's check in with him. Let's just ask him how he's doing and where he feel we may have gotten off on the wrong track, sorry. So I don't know about you, mate, but if anyone's listened to this, that's kind of my immediate go-to, is when I'm talking to someone who feels some of what we're talking about. Because again, if I were to go back and ask Steve that question in 2021 about why did you get into swim coaching in the first place, all my reasons for getting into swim coaching in the first place were wrong. They were all wrong. None of it was right. And that was why I ended up at that point where I wasn't happy. But now I get to say I did so much work on the front end around this business that I know no matter how dark a day I may end up having, I can come back to that initial version of myself and say, okay, Steve, what's happening right now, or what has happened of late that's allowed you to lose sight of those reasons and that purpose and that intention that you once had when you first got started?
I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. How did we set it up? So when I went into real estate, because that was the only option I had as somebody who was smart but hadn't gone through the university system in the UK. So what do? You go into sales. And I applied for 20 jobs and got offered 3 jobs at real estate agents. I'm 20 years old or 21 years old. This seems like a thing to do. There was not a lot of thought in it. In fact, actually, I said to my mum at the time, I don't want to do this. Real estate agents, they're all scummy, slimy people. I don't want to be a real estate agent. And she was, she said, just go try it and see. And that just go try it and see lasted for 12 years. However, for, large periods of that, I just wasn't happy. But the captivation of the money or the captivation of the challenge kept me going. But I wasn't fulfilled. Yeah. I wasn't happy.
I relate to that.
And I think cycling coaching I was a lot happier in. I really loved the work. But working in the system here in the United States that isn't supportive of Olympic sports, and there wasn't the money that there was in the UK or in other countries, both income and investment in the program to be successful. And being around this program that there was no way it could be successful. I was doing the job of 6 people in the UK and getting paid half of what one of them would have paid. It just wasn't sustainable work. Plus this gnawing feeling of there's a bigger impact that I'm destined to have in life. Now I can work with companies, and I can be affecting hundreds of people at a time. And I'm doing men's groups that are affecting many men at a time. Whereas, Olympic Development Program, we had 12 athletes. And there's a bit of a wider effect there in the fact that when we started the program, the number of young athletes competing in national championships tripled in the first year of the program. So we're affecting interest in sport, which is good. But it wasn't enough of an impact on people's well-being for me. And I'm realizing as I get older, that's what drives me, is that impact on people's well-being. That's what really motivates me. And another thing I think is this chasing financial success and freedom. And they're also talking about this on this Dive CEO episode of how most successful businesses are not driven by chasing financial success first. That tends to lead to failure, because you have to be so passionate and determined about what it is you're doing, and usually the financial success comes as a byproduct of that. So you look at most of these businesses, the founder has an aim. So if I talk about one of the companies I work with here, Mudwater, which is a successful company now. However, when the founder started it, his mission is improving people's health by reducing caffeine intake. Because he was following the data and the studies about how caffeine intake was going up, and it was negatively affecting our sleep, and our sleep is like the number one thing that you've got to get right. Everything comes from good sleep, as we saw for me this morning. And that was what was motivating him. He wasn't thinking, I'm going to turn this into $100 million a year business. He was thinking, how do I help people sleep better? Well, I give you a coffee alternative with a lot of healthy ingredients that you are motivated to drink, that still gives you a little bit of a wake up because of the ingredients, but it's not a wake up based on caffeine. Mm-hmm. So that's his aim. And from that aim, now he is being financially successful. Mm-hmm. But the aim first is, I want to change the world. And I think that's what a lot of visionary founders are thinking. I want to change the world. And they don't even know how far that's going to go. They've just got this, I want to change the world. And typically, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing now, or I'm not good at working for other people. I think an episode we need to do on is neurodivergency, something I have, and how prevalent that is with founders, and how often they don't fit in the typical corporate model. So you have to go and work for yourself. I mean, that was something I experienced. I didn't like working for people that didn't care as much as me, that weren't as smart as me, that didn't put the effort in that I was prepared to put in. So, from an early age, I realized I was going to be working for myself. And I was, from 25 years old, I was working for myself. Even the Olympic Development Program, I found a private funder, developed the program, pretty much did it independently of USA Cycling. So I think it's that self-understanding, Steve, of, can I do this, right? Do I know what it takes to create something by myself rather than be an employee? What is the thing that's driving me to do that? Is it financial success? Is it some impact dream I have? Is it just, I know I can't do what I'm doing now and I need to do something different? I mean, plenty of businesses have started because of that. And then I think it's, come back into the societal and the American dream. How has that pushed people to do things that don't work for them?
Right. How has that pushed people to do things that don't work for them? At the heart of that, there's we become victims of comparison, don't we? I think this world of working with founders, working with leaders. I love that example that you give with Mudwater, because it's like, okay, at the heart of that, there's a true mission that remains the anchor, remains the North Star of everything that they're doing, everything they represent, and they want to be held accountable to that, is what I'm hearing as well. It's like it's not as simple as just setting out the mission, and it's not this flashy thing that we put on the website and it just makes people think, oh, this is who we are. It's truly a theme of accountability in what they do and how they show up. And I was just this morning when I was on the bike listening to episode of Adam Grant's Rethinking, and he had the Surgeon General. I even wrote his name down so I wouldn't mess it up. Vivek Murthy is his name. Surgeon General came on, and this guy is just adamant about figuring out loneliness in the United States specifically.
I was listening to that at the weekend as well.
Yeah. And so here at the heart of this, it's like there's this huge social media conversation. It's like, that's all well and good. And there's so much work to do around that. But at the heart of it, it's people's inability to actually align with what matters most. Purpose, belonging. Purpose and belonging. Like that. There is no better way to sort of emphasize that than what you and I are doing right now in this moment. Right now in this moment, you and I are connecting with one another. We're having a conversation, and you and I are going to have a better day because of this conversation. And it's not because of what we're talking about. It's because of the fact that we are having an intentional, purposeful conversation with one another and showing up with that commitment to respecting and honoring one another's time. And that stuff, like you feel it internally. You truly feel it. And this is kind of where I wanted to go, is that as I was listening to that episode and as we're talking through this, and this is something I've felt for so long now, our body's really good at telling us when we're on the wrong path. It's absolutely brilliant at it, because we feel the misery when we overcommit on the wrong path. We do. And some of us are comfortable living in that misery, and that's fine. That's for you to figure out. But then there's this emotional
a torture in America, to come back to the American dream, Steve, isn't there?
Right.
Of there's a valor in look at me suffer.
Right.
I'm
grind.
Suffering. The grind.
Look at the grind. Give me
that concept.
Exactly. Can't stand it. And again, you and I came from elite sport. And I used to have athletes. I was coaching at a time where that word grind came into common media and all this kind of stuff. And athletes would talk to me about the grind. It's like, you use that word around me, I'm telling you to go home. Like, I don't want to hear you use that word, because you're not even willing to define what it means. You don't just get to use it because you're tired, But that's a whole nother conversation. I'm going to get off my soapbox with that one. But the heart of what we're talking about here, though, that true fulfillment, like for us to emotionally feel dialed in with what it means to be fulfilled, we have to listen to ourselves. We have to pay attention to ourselves. We have to make time to get to know ourselves. And if we're so busy, like you said, chasing this idea of the American dream, too busy in comparison. And just to be clear, this is not me just sitting on my soapbox telling you I'm holier than thou. Like, I'm not this. I deal with this. As my business grows, there are days where I get absolutely tempted back into that. I get tempted into it all the time. When I've got another person, they come to me, they want me to work with their leaders, they want me to work with their organization. Ooh, another contract. Ooh, another this. Ooh, another that. How big are we going to get? I'm going to need more people, all this kind of thing. You start to get tempted by it, and you very easily fall into the trap if you're not doing this work diligently around what it means to be emotionally fulfilled.
Okay, let's explore that. And this is why I'm having a little jab at the American dream. I think it's really important to have some motivational factors in your life. Like, why am I doing this? So when I think of the American dream, typically it is this, I can't remember if we said this at the beginning of the show or me and you were talking off air, but being an immigrant and coming to America and making something of yourself, right? America is seen as the country to do that. Whereas actually statistically now, the country with the biggest upward mobility is Sweden. So, and there's advantages to America for this, right? You're selling an image of the country that's useful around the world, and America needs immigration. It's a big political hot topic at the moment, but actually America needs immigration like many countries do, because you need more workers to keep the economy going. So it's an attractive sell to the rest of the world, right? Come to America, make your fortune. However, the people that get lauded for doing that, they're the exception, not the rule. And, we work with some of these exceptional people. This is what we do. This is the world that we're in. However, I think if you're going to do this, if you're going to found a company, first get clear about why you're doing that. Learn from our mistakes, right? You know, I founded a real estate agency because I just wanted to prove I could do it better than the people that I was working for. And that kept me going for 6 years, but, you know, I didn't really enjoy it. And in some ways, I'm glad I went through the process because I learned from it. So I don't devalue the process that I went through. However, if I'd had some support then and some coaching then, I might have gone in a different direction and opened up something else. I might have opened my cycling coaching business 6 years earlier rather than being a real estate agent. And I think this is where, you know, coaching, friends, somebody outside of you can reflect back to you, hey, you're not happy. Why are you not happy? What would it take for you to be happy? And then I guess we've got to get into this difficult concept or conversation of, can you be emotionally fulfilled and be financially successful? And I believe you can. So I believe the Gordon Gekko, sleep when you're dead, crush everybody to be wealthy. I don't believe that's the model that human beings actually succeed in. It looks fun in a film, but that's not the experience I have, right? So that's for psychopaths. They make up a very small percentage of society, although they do tend to be a little bit more prevalent in leadership positions. But for those of us that actually need to get on with other human beings, which is 98% of us, fulfillment is relationships. And this is where men can struggle, especially. Women typically are better at relationships. I can't remember the exact statistic, but there was another podcast I was listening to of Richard Reeves when he talked about how companies led by women tend to take a little bit less risk, but the people tend to be happier at those companies. They understand the role of fulfillment better than men. Men tend to be more driven to succeed, an obvious success. So wealth, property, cars, nice watches. They're driven by this desire to be seen as successful as much as to be successful. And men are very driven by achievement. So what is it that I can achieve? You know, think about me, right? I do go-kart racing now, moved on from cycling. I want to win. I'm there to win. I'm there to go as fast as possible. I don't enjoy just bowling around. It's like, okay, I've got to improve on last time. That is a huge motivational factor to me. So how do we combine both the societal stereotyping for men and for women and what that means? And then how do we combine that with actually genetics and evolution, which is human beings need to be with other human beings. And the research around that is overwhelmingly clear that we get much of our fulfillment from the relationships that we have. So now you have this conundrum. You got very driven men wanting to achieve something for status, to look good, to make themselves a higher value mate, to just because that's what they believe is going to make them happy. And then, you know, we get into our 40s and 50s and then we're asking all these questions of why did I do this? And we've got all of the money and we've got the business. And I think now with this knowledge, we can start working with younger founders and say, okay, as you're building this business, what are you doing to build your fulfillment? What is your social circle like? It's one of the reasons that I run men's groups. And I'm very passionate about that work is because I work with a lot of people that are really lonely. It's why very shortly, we'll be talking about it on here, but I'll give a little preview for it. I'm going to be launching something called the Founders Catalyst Intensive, a 6-month group for founders to come together, because me and you both know how lonely it feels. And it doesn't have to be lonely, right? There are other people going through exactly what you're going through. So one of the things I most love about group work, and I see this in my men's groups all the time, is somebody will share a challenging situation and the group's listening and, you know, they're there with them, and then I'll stop the group, I'll pause them and I'll say, hands up anybody else who feels like this. And typically more than half the group will put their hands up. Right. And you just see this light bulb moment on the person's face where they go, oh, I'm not the only person who feels like this. But their belief and the way that our minds work is we feel that isolation and loneliness. Oh, I'm the only person going through this kind of grief, or I'm the only person feeling unfulfilled like this, or having a challenge in my marriage, or having a child that I'm having difficulties with. And then everyone else puts their hands up and goes, yeah, it's really difficult for me when my kid was really young. And so I think groups are really important, and knowing as human beings that our connection to other people is absolutely vital for our fulfillment and success and emotional well-being.
Yeah, it is. And this will not be the last time. I think just to really underline and emphasize this entire episode and the topic around it, I think for us to truly give it the credit and highlight the importance of it all, is that this is something that you and I probably we need to be revisiting every 8 to 10 episodes in some way, shape, or form. Just to really bring people around to like, hey, listen, this is every, we release these every 2 weeks, so maybe every 3 months, 3 to 4 months, we're going to cover a topic or come back just to the very heart of everything we talked about today, and re-emphasize the need to be pursuing emotional fulfillment, whatever you've got going on in your respective business and in your respective company within the position that you hold as a leader, to honor the importance of the emotional fulfillment piece. Because again, I mentioned it before in that short story that I told. Like I was at a men's retreat this past weekend with my church, about 75 men. I probably hugged about 20 men this weekend, and like, it's just like that stuff, to come back home to my family having been replenished. And that's what it is, mate, isn't it? It's a replenishment, because it's okay to go into something like that and be like, I'm tired, I'm distracted, I'm not focused, I'm not prioritizing really what I know I need to be in order to find that fulfillment. I need to go seek replenishment right now, and I need to feel as though I'm being topped back up again, because life, chances are, is going to take that away from me periodically, week in, week out. But if I don't really make that effort to replenish strategically, I'm going to end up on that path without the fulfillment, chasing that prize, and wondering about, as I get closer to that prize, why the hell did I even start this process in the first place? And I'm just, yeah.
I have a little funny story about that, Steve.
Yeah.
So, as a young man back in the UK, I think I've spoken about it on here, narcissistic, sociopathic father, right? I don't want to be like him, but I didn't know what I wanted to be like. I eventually got introduced to a therapist after some resistance, eventually started working with a therapist, and then he suggested men's groups to me. And one of his friends who I also knew said, right, come to this men's group with me, and you can come as my guest and get an experience of what it's like before you kind of join a group. And part of the process was you have to go on this weekend of kind of discovery weekend with a bunch of other men. So I was thinking about whether I wanted to do it, and he said to me, Lee, you'll never experience love like other men can give you. Mm-hmm. And as a young man, I'm like, oh, this sounds a bit gay. What is all this weirdness? Why is he saying this to me? Is this a cult? What is going on?
Right.
And now, 25 years on, I completely understand what he means. And, the reason I was chuckling about it as you were speaking is because we would start every men's group with a hug. So every guy would go round and hug every other guy, and we'd finish each group with a hug. And now I do these groups virtually because it allows me to get more guys together. So there's a benefit to that. However, I really miss the hugging part, right? We're human beings. We're designed to be in physical and emotional contact with other human beings, to the point that if we weren't back in olden times, we would die. The worst thing for a human being is to be excluded from the community. And we see that now. We see that with teenage girls with bullying, and if they feel excluded from the community, how painful emotionally it is for them. And we see it with middle-aged men, guys our kind of age and a bit older, that are typically financially successful. Their first marriage has ended. They have adult children, and they put all of their effort into building their business or their career, and they let their friendships slide. And men are poor at keeping friendships and creating friendships. And it's something that we often talk about in the men's groups is how do you become friends with other men? You know, my wife will go into the gym and she'll compliment another woman on what she's wearing, and then blah, 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 they're chatting, and suddenly they're following each other on Instagram. For me, it feels a little bit more awkward to do that. You know, I can do that, and I push myself to do that, but I see guys struggling with the, you know, going up and saying, oh, I really like the shorts you're wearing. And you get that look of like, are you hitting on me? Like, what's going on here? And it's like, no, I really like the shorts you're wearing, and I want to appreciate them. So I think for men, it's a little bit more awkward and clumsy as to how we maintain these friendships. We're told societally that providing for our family and being wealthy is more important than those friendships. It's not. You know, I am the most fulfilled I've ever been in my life right now because the work I do is truly life-giving. I really believe I'm making a difference. I'm making an impact in the world, and I have really good friendships that I work very hard to maintain. I have a group of friends. We aim to meet 4 times a year, typically meet 2, which we call the mammals, so middle-aged men in lycra, because we were at one point competitive athletes. And, you know, I was with them a couple of weekends ago in San Francisco. You know, just had some meals. We went to the museum, and then I did some go-kart racing. And as you said, I came back from what was a very busy weekend, very emotionally recharged and refilled, because I got to spend actual time with my friends. And many of these people I see weekly in my own men's group, virtually, but it's so different to get together and spend time together.
Yep, absolutely. I think more than it's funny, you know, this is the 8th episode now we've recorded, and worked really hard every single time we have these chats, mate, to try to really land the point and leave people with this sort of intentional step forwards. And I think it's just as simple as, you know, today we've talked a little bit more around it as opposed to like through it, and I think that's fine. You know, I think we're just 2 guys having a chat about something that's very important here. But in its most simplest form, like, make some time to today, tomorrow, soon. You know, as right now, like, send that text right now to someone that you've not made the 1 hour for whatever reason for too long, to sit down, meet, shake their hand, and hopefully by the time you leave, and give them a hug, and just feel as though you're making that effort. And it's this word that I like to use in everything I do is pursue. You know, pursue is intentional. When we pursue emotional fulfillment, it means that we're actually trying to achieve it. You know, we don't want to hope for it. We don't want it to just sort of work its way into our life. We actually want to pursue it. And that actually creates the accountability around it by putting it that way. And so I encourage people to listen to this, to make that effort. And, you know, if you are someone that's sort of looking at your phone right now and you're just like, I don't even know where to start with that, shoot us an email. Shoot us an email, and we'll start right here. We'd be happy to make that time to chat, whether it be virtually to begin with, and start that relationship, and who knows where that might lead down the road. But mate, that's my thoughts in closing. What about you?
I'm going to reframe it slightly from pursue to create. I think we need to be very conscious about what we're creating in this world, be it our businesses, be it our friendships, our relationships, both platonic and romantic. I think we should probably do an episode where one or both of us does our 9 boxes together, and we go through that and talk about each box and why it's important to us, and what we still need to create in that particular box that we might not have created yet, or even if a box needs to change because it's no longer serving us. And I think to give a live demonstration of what that process is like might be useful. So, yeah, I think what I would like people to leave today with is, what are you creating in your life that brings you fulfillment? What are the relationships that you maybe haven't nurtured as much as you should, or have let go of, that you could lean back into? And I've been there where I had very little friends, especially back in my real estate days. I was very focused. I really was poor at maintaining those friendships, and now I'm very good at it. And one thing for me was letting go of this ego of, people should be chasing me, or, you know, like, I need to feel that you love me. What I've realized is I'm super organized. apart from today, listeners, I'm super organized, and I'm very good at getting people together and creating groups. So instead of waiting for it to happen, I just go create it. Right, I'm going to create a group. I'm going to chase the guys. I'm going to make it happen. And I don't make it about me when people don't respond to me, or when people don't, they're slow at responding. I just go, they're guys. They're typically not good at this stuff. They're very busy. It's not about me. And as long as I let go that, then I can make these things happen. I can create these groups. I can deal with other people's sloppiness and messiness, and maintain those friendships. And one thing that I've taken on is when I'm driving somewhere, I try to ring somebody and have a call with them, instead of typically what I would have done before is to put a podcast on because, hey, I'm a coach and I've got to learn more and I've got to be a better coach. You know what makes me a better coach? Feeling good. And feeling good is when I speak to my friends and stay in that connection.
Love it. Love it. All very achievable things. And, mate, at this time, I think now is a great time for you to get up and go get yourself some caffeine, get some mud water, or you start drinking that.
I've been dreaming of my breakfast smoothie. We're going to come to this when you do
the
the
Folks?
episode.
You hear that, folks? That is sacrifice. We have one of our hosts who starved himself today. Starved himself coming into this episode.
How much I like eating and how much I eat. And we're going to get to this in our episode on neurodivergency, but I have the same smoothie every single day. This is me as a human being.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm super interesting, Steve. They call me Mr. Interesting.
That's right. That's right. On that bombshell, we will let you all go, and we appreciate your attention and time for a slightly extended episode this time. But that you can't contain passion, folks. That's the way that's what I take away from this. But as always, mate, appreciate your time.
You too, buddy.
Cheers.
Bye.